4 true graveyard shift horror stories. I remember the exact moment the first strange thing happened because it was so quiet that at night I could hear the fluorescent lights humming above me like distant insects, and the security monitor in front of me showed 12 empty camera feeds from different parts of the building. And nothing ever happened during my graveyard shifts, which is why I took the job in the first place, because I like quiet work, and the warehouse outside the city barely had any staff after midnight. So most nights I just walked the same route every hour, checked the locked doors, watched the cameras, and waited for morning. But that night around 1:17 a.m., one of the cameras showed someone standing in the loading dock, and the strange part was that the loading dock door alarm never went off, and the motion sensors didn't trigger either. Yet the camera clearly showed a person just standing there facing the wall, completely still, like they had been paused mid-step, and I remember leaning closer to the monitor trying to see their face. But the image looked wrong, like the figure was slightly blurred compared to the rest of the scene, and I thought maybe the camera was glitching, so I grabbed my flashlight and walked down the long hallway toward the loading dock, and the whole way there I kept telling myself it was probably just a reflection or a shadow, or maybe one of the drivers came back early. But when I reached the loading dock, the place was empty. The door was still locked, and the alarm panel was green, which meant nobody had opened it. And when I checked the camera feed again, the figure was gone, like it had never been there at all. And that was when I noticed something written on the small dry erase board beside the monitor that I was absolutely sure had been blank earlier, because I check it every shift out of habit, and written on it in thin, shaky letters were the words, "Do not look at camera, 6 after 2 a.m. And I remember feeling a slow, uncomfortable chill because there were only 3 other guards who worked this building, and none of them were on shift that night. And I had erased that board myself at the start of my shift because someone had written an old phone number on it earlier in the week, so I knew those words had appeared sometime after midnight, and I stared at the board for a long time before finally wiping it clean, because I assumed one of the day shift workers had come in early and was messing with me. But around 2:03 a.m., curiosity got the better of me, and I looked at camera 6 anyway. And at first it looked completely normal, showing the empty hallway near the employee lockers. But after maybe 5 seconds, something moved at the far end of the frame, and a person slowly stepped out from behind the corner. Except the strange part was that they were facing away from the camera. Yet somehow I could still see their face, like their head had turned too far around, and the image flickered once before freezing completely. And I swear I could feel someone standing behind me, even though the security office door was locked. And when I turned around, there was no one there. But the monitor behind me had gone black, except for camera 6, which was still showing that same hallway, except now the figure was closer, like it had taken several steps forward during the second. I looked away, and that was when I remembered the message on the board, and I shut the monitor off immediately and spent the rest of that shift sitting in the office with the lights on until morning, telling myself it was just a technical glitch. But the next night when I came back, the board had another message written on it before I even clocked in. And this time it said, "If you see them on camera, 6, do not walk that hallway." And I laughed it off at first, because I assumed someone from the day crew was leaving creepy jokes. But around 12:40 a.m., camera 6 flickered again, And the hallway looked slightly different, like the lights were dimmer than they should be, and I kept telling myself not to stare too long, but something about it made it hard to look away, and after about 10 seconds, the figure stepped into view again. Except this time they were much closer to the camera and their face looked exactly like mine. And the moment I noticed that the camera feed cut out completely and the lights in the security office flickered once and stayed dim for the rest of the night, and after that I started avoiding camera 6 completely, which worked for a while until the third night, when another guard named Marcus came in early to drop off paperwork, and I casually mentioned the weird camera glitch, and he got very quiet for a few seconds before asking me what time I usually checked camera 6, and when I told him around 2 a.m, he just nodded slowly and said the last guy who worked the graveyard shift used to complain about that same camera, and one night he walked down that hallway to check it in person, and after that he quit without explanation. And the strange part was nobody ever found anything wrong with the camera, so management assumed he just made it up. But before Marcus left, he said something that stuck with me, which was that the previous guard had also left a note on the whiteboard before he quit. And when I asked what it said, Marcus hesitated before answering and said it told the next guard not to look at camera 6 after 2 a.m. And I remember feeling a strange, sinking feeling, because that meant the message I erased that first night might not have been written recently at all, and that maybe it had been sitting there longer than anyone realized, but things didn't really start getting worse until the following week when I was working another quiet shift, and the monitors were normal all night until exactly 1:59 a.m. when every camera feed flickered at the same time, and for just 1 second they all showed the same hallway from camera 6. Like every camera in the building had suddenly moved to the same place, and standing at the end of that hallway was the same figure again, except now it was facing the camera directly. And even though the image quality was low, I could tell the face was still mine, but the expression was different because it was smiling, and the moment the clocks in the office hit 2 a.m., every screen went black except one, and I didn't even have to look to know which camera it was showing. And that was when I heard something from the hallway outside the security office, a slow, steady tapping, like someone lightly knocking on the wall every few seconds. And the strange part was that the knocking matched the movement on the monitor, because every time the tapping sound happened, the figure on camera 6 took one step closer toward the camera. And I realized that if the camera showed the end of the hallway, then the direction the figure was walking would eventually lead straight to the security office door, and the tapping outside continued, slowly getting closer and louder until it stopped directly on the other side of the door. And at the exact same moment, the figure on the monitor stopped walking too. And I sat there staring at the screen, waiting for something else to happen. But the figure just stood there, smiling exactly the way I was sitting in my chair. And after about a minute, the monitor flickered again, and the hallway was empty, like nothing had ever been there. But since that night, I stopped checking camera 6 completely, and I taped a small piece of paper over that monitor so I wouldn't accidentally look at it again. And sometimes during my shifts, the other cameras still flicker for a second and show that same hallway. And when they do, I always hear the same tapping sound somewhere in the building, slowly getting closer, like someone following the route I walk every night. And the strangest part is that a few weeks ago, I found another message written on the whiteboard when I arrived for my shift. And And even though I erased it right away, I still remember exactly what it said because the handwriting looked exactly like mine and the message was simple. It said, "Thank you for not opening the door yet."